You're listening to Underground USA News.
Tuesday, July 29, 2025. The U.S. Justice Department has filed a formal complaint against U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, accusing him of misconduct and demanding his removal from a high-profile deportation case due to alleged improper public comments about President Trump and his administration. The complaint, lodged by Attorney General Pam Bondi's Chief of Staff, Chad Mizell, claims Boasberg's remarks at a March judicial conference undermined judicial impartiality by suggesting the Trump administration would defy court orders, potentially triggering a constitutional crisis. This action, the second such complaint against a federal judge this year, reflects ongoing tensions between the Trump administration and the judiciary, particularly over Boasberg's rulings against deportation policies under the Alien Enemies Act. While Boasberg has not publicly responded, the move signals a robust effort to ensure judicial accountability amid politically charged legal battles. Cincinnati Police Chief Teresa Thiedt announced charges against 5 individuals following a brutal downtown brawl on July 26, 2025, near 4th and Elm Streets, which left a man bloodied and a woman knocked unconscious. The incident, captured in viral videos, showed a group of black suspects attacking a white man, with one person body slamming him, while a white woman attempting to intervene was struck in the head, causing her to collapse. Thiedt expressed disgust at the cruel and unacceptable violence, noting that only one 911 call was made despite numerous bystanders recording. Witnesses reported a prior interaction between the man and attackers, though the motive remains unclear. The incident has sparked concerns about rising violent crime in Cincinnati's central business district, with local leaders condemning the act and calling for accountability. In a deeply disturbing case out of Bibb County, Alabama, 7 individuals face charges including human trafficking, rape, and sexual torture after authorities uncovered a child sex trafficking ring operating out of an underground storm shelter. At least 10 children, aged 3 to 15, were allegedly subjected to horrific abuse, with some suspects, including parents of the victims, using animal shock collars and drugs to facilitate the crimes. The suspects, identified as Rebecca Brewer, Sarah Louise Terrell, Ricky Terrell, Dalton Terrell, William Chase McElroy, Andres Velasquez Trillo, and Timothy St. John, waived bond hearings, opting to remain in custody. Sheriff Jody Wade called it the most horrible thing he's seen in 33 years. While concerns mount over the Biden administration's failure to answer 65,000 calls to a hotline for trafficked minors, suggesting a troubling lack of federal response to such atrocities. The Department of Government Efficiency, under the Trump administration, has developed an innovative AI tool designed to review and eliminate roughly 50% of the 200,000 federal regulations, aiming to save trillions in compliance costs. This bold initiative seeks to streamline government operations by targeting outdated or unnecessary rules, with early applications already underway at agencies like Housing and Consumer Protection. While critics question the tool's accuracy and potential legal risks, supporters argue it's a necessary step to reduce bureaucratic overreach and foster economic freedom. The plan, set to cut 100,000 regulations by January 2026, reflects a commitment to efficient governance and fiscal responsibility. Federal court proceedings in New Jersey ground to a halt on July 28, 2025, as questions surrounding the legality of Alina Habba's appointment as acting U.S. attorney disrupted hearings, grand jury sessions, and plea deals. Habba, a former attorney for President Trump, was named acting U.S. attorney after a contentious battle with federal judges who appointed Desiree Lee Grace to replace her, only for the Justice Department to fire Grace hours later. A legal challenge by attorney Thomas Mirigliano argues Habba's appointment violates federal law, potentially unraveling prosecutorial actions taken under her authority. This upheaval highlights ongoing tensions between the Trump administration and judicial oversight, raising concerns about the stability of federal law enforcement in the state. Michigan Democrats, led by Rep. Betsy Coffia, have introduced a bill that would allow state prosecution of immigration and customs enforcement agents who wear masks during immigration operations. A move critics argue undermines federal law enforcement and prioritizes political posturing over officer safety. The proposal, which carries penalties of up to 90 days in jail and fines, comes years after the state imposed $500 fines for not wearing masks during COVID-19, highlighting what some see as inconsistent policy priorities. Republicans and DHS officials, including Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, contend that masks are essential for protecting ICE agents from threats by dangerous gangs like MS-13, and they criticize the bill as an attack on law enforcement's ability to secure communities. The legislation is seen as part of a broader democratic effort to challenge federal immigration enforcement, with similar proposals emerging in states like Massachusetts and California. U.S. equity futures climbed modestly on July 29, 2025, with the S&P 500 set to mark its seventh straight record high, driven by optimism in the tech sector and anticipation of a flurry of economic data releases, including JOLTS, housing prices, and consumer confidence. The Nasdaq 100 outperformed with a 0.5% gain, while bond yields dipped slightly, with the 10-year Treasury at 4.39%, despite global market jitters, particularly in Asia, where the Hang Seng and Nikkei saw losses. U.S. markets remain buoyed by strong performances from Mag 7 stocks and cyclicals, though concerns linger about potential tariff impacts and geopolitical tensions, notably after former President Trump's comments on possible sanctions against Russia. Investors are bracing for a packed week, with the FOMC decision, PCE data, and non-farm payrolls looming. The collapse of a $23 billion deal between US-based BlackRock and Hong Kong's CK Hutchison has raised alarms about China's potential to expand its influence over the Panama Canal, a critical global trade route handling 5% of maritime commerce. Initially hailed by former President Trump as a step to curb Beijing's reach, the agreement to transfer control of key ports, including Balboa and Cristobal, fell apart after China pushed for its state-owned shipping giant, COSCO, to gain a direct stake. Amid pressures from Beijing, including threats of an anti-monopoly probe, CK Hutchison signaled openness to including Chinese investors, prompting concerns about national security and the erosion of U.S. influence in the region. Panama maintains it retains full sovereignty over the canal, but the failed deal underscores the challenges of countering China's strategic ambitions in global infrastructure. On July 17, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order establishing a new Schedule G classification for non-career federal employees, aimed at enhancing efficiency in implementing his policy agenda. This move allows for the appointment of temporary, policy-focused workers who can be hired and fired at will, bypassing traditional career employee protections. The White House emphasizes that this reclassification targets roles involved in policy-making or advocacy, ensuring alignment with the administration's priorities. Critics, including labor unions, argue it undermines civil service protections, while supporters see it as a necessary step to address bureaucratic resistance and improve government accountability. In a horrifying act of violence, 27-year-old Shane Devin Tamura, a former high school football player from Las Vegas, killed 4 people, including an NYPD officer, in a Midtown Manhattan office building at 345 Park Avenue before taking his own life. Authorities report that Tamura, who had a documented history of mental health issues, intended to target the NFL headquarters but mistakenly took an elevator to the offices of Rudin Management, where he continued his rampage. A note found on Tamura's body revealed grievances against the NFL, blaming the league for his alleged struggle with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a neurodegenerative disease linked to head trauma. This devastating incident, the deadliest mass shooting in New York City in 25 years, underscores the urgent need for addressing mental health crises and securing public spaces against such unpredictable acts of violence. In a promising development for the U.S. economy, The goods trade deficit shrank significantly in June, dropping by nearly 11% to $86 billion, driven by a notable decline in imports, according to the Commerce Department. This unexpected contraction, exceeding economic forecasts, signals potential strength in the second quarter GDP, with projections suggesting growth exceeding 2%. The reduction in imports, particularly consumer goods, reflects a cautious approach by businesses, possibly bracing for tariff impacts, while exports held relatively steady. This shift underscores a resilient economic landscape, offering hope for sustained growth amidst global trade uncertainties. A coalition of 21 states and the District of Columbia has filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Agriculture to block its demand for detailed personal data on Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program recipients, citing concerns over privacy violations and potential misuse for immigration enforcement. The USDA, under a Trump executive order, seeks comprehensive data, including Social Security numbers and immigration status, to curb waste and fraud. But critics argue existing safeguards already address these issues. The states, led by Democrat attorneys general, claim the move threatens trust in public assistance programs and could deter eligible families from seeking aid. The lawsuit, filed in California, seeks to halt the USDA's July 30 deadline and protect state funding. In a landmark move for American industry, Union Pacific Corporation has agreed to acquire Norfolk Southern Corporation for $85 billion, creating the nation's first transcontinental railroad. This merger, announced on July 29, 2025, will connect over 50,000 route miles across 43 states, linking key ports and streamlining freight transport from coast to coast. Proponents argue it will enhance efficiency, reduce highway congestion, and bolster economic growth by eliminating costly interchange delays, while critics raise concerns about reduced competition and potential rate increases. The deal, which promises to preserve union jobs and invest in safety and innovation, awaits regulatory approval from the Surface Transportation Board, with a projected closure by early 2027. In a stark illustration of how government-imposed wage floors can distort labor markets and harm the very workers they aim to help, a recent study from the National Bureau of Economic Research reveals that California's 2023 law raising the minimum wage to $20 for fast food chains, with at least 60 national locations, led to a significant decline in employment, with an estimated 18,000 jobs lost in the state's fast food sector, compared to what would have occurred without the hike. The research, analyzing data through May 2024, found that fast food employment in California dropped by 2.64% while rising marginally elsewhere in the U.S., attributing the disparity directly to the wage increase that forced businesses to cut staff, automate, or raise prices to offset higher labor costs, ultimately burdening low-skilled workers and consumers alike. This outcome aligns with broader economic evidence, showing that such interventions often reduce opportunities for entry-level jobs, particularly in lower-wage regions, underscoring the perils of overriding free market dynamics with well-meaning but counterproductive policies. A groundbreaking Alzheimer's drug, trontinemab, has demonstrated remarkable potential in clearing amyloid plaques from the brain in just 28 weeks, outperforming existing treatments like lecanemab and donanemab, which take 18 months to achieve similar results. In Phase 2 trials involving 149 patients, 90% achieved amyloid clearance with minimal side effects, raising hopes for a safer, more effective treatment that could slow or even prevent the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Experts, including Professor John Hardy, hailed the drug as game-changing for its rapid action and improved safety profile, potentially making it a candidate for NHS funding due to reduced monitoring needs. Phase 3 trials with 1,600 participants are underway to confirm these findings and explore its preventive potential in asymptomatic individuals. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is spearheading a bold initiative to reverse the 2009 endangerment finding that declared greenhouse gases a threat to public welfare. arguing that the economic burdens of such regulations have been underestimated, while downplaying the impact of U.S. vehicle emissions on climate change. This move aligns with President Trump's agenda to dismantle costly climate policies, aiming to unleash American energy production and reduce regulatory overreach that Zeldin claims stifles economic prosperity. The draft plan, announced on a conservative podcast, is expected to spark significant legal challenges as it seeks to reshape the EPA's approach to environmental policy, prioritizing affordable energy and job creation over what Zeldin calls the climate change religion. The Environmental Protection Agency is set to rescind the 2009 endangerment finding, an Obama-era policy that labeled greenhouse gases as a public health threat, enabling over $1 trillion in climate-related regulations. This decision, announced by EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin and Energy Secretary Christopher Wright, includes a proposal to end federal greenhouse gas regulations for automobiles and trucks, aiming to restore consumer choice and reduce costs by removing mandates that critics argue inflated vehicle prices and limited options. The move, supported by groups like the Indiana Motor Truck Association, faces opposition from environmentalists who warn of increased climate risks, but proponents assert it will alleviate economic burdens and preserve access to affordable gas-powered vehicles. President Donald Trump recently called on European leaders to halt windmill construction, labeling them a con job that mars scenic landscapes and burdens economies with high costs and inefficiencies. Speaking on Podforce One, he argued that wind turbines, often manufactured in China, harm the environment and require substantial subsidies, echoing sentiments that they fail to deliver reliable energy. Critics, including conservative voices, highlight issues like land use conflicts and disposal challenges with turbine blades, reinforcing Trump's stance against what he sees as an overhyped renewable energy source. While the EU continues to prioritize green energy, Trump's remarks underscore a broader debate about balancing environmental goals with practical economic considerations. Thailand's military has accused Cambodia of breaching a recently agreed-upon ceasefire, reigniting deadly clashes along their 800-kilometer border over disputed ancient temple sites. Despite peace talks in Malaysia on July 28, 2025, which established an unconditional truce effective at midnight, Thai authorities reported Cambodian forces launching attacks into Thai territory, prompting a defensive response. Cambodia's defense ministry denies these claims, asserting no violations occurred, while both sides prepare for further military talks. The conflict, rooted in a century-old territorial dispute, has already claimed at least 38 lives and displaced nearly 300,000 people, raising concerns about regional stability and the effectiveness of diplomatic efforts to restore peace. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is reportedly moving toward a controversial plan to annex parts of Gaza, starting with a buffer zone and potentially expanding to the entire territory, in a bid to appease far-right coalition members like Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and prevent his government's collapse. The strategy, which has drawn international scrutiny and risks escalating tensions, involves offering Hamas a ceasefire with terms likely designed to ensure rejection, paving the way for Israel to claim Gaza as its own. Critics warn this could further destabilize the region, while supporters argue it strengthens Israel's security against Hamas. The plan's reported backing by the Trump administration adds a layer of geopolitical complexity, raising questions about U.S. involvement in the region's future. A horrific attack by the Islamic State-affiliated Allied Democratic Forces on a Catholic church in Kamchatka, Democratic Republic of Congo, left over 40 worshippers dead, including nearly 20 women and 9 children, during a Sunday night mass on July 27, 2025. The rebels, armed with guns and machetes, stormed the church, burned homes and shops, and took hostages, with some reports indicating up to 43 fatalities. Despite the presence of security forces in the area, no intervention occurred, raising serious concerns about the Congolese government's ability to protect its citizens from the ADF, a group with a long history of targeting civilians and exploiting regional instability. Local leaders and residents are demanding urgent military action as the attackers remain near, underscoring the need for stronger measures to combat this persistent terrorist threat. Torrential rains have unleashed chaos in Beijing, claiming at least 30 lives and forcing the evacuation of over 80,000 residents, as nearly a year's worth of rainfall inundated the capital in just days. The hardest-hit areas, particularly Mian and Yanqing, saw catastrophic flooding and landslides, with 543.4 mm of rain recorded in northern districts, overwhelming infrastructure and leaving 136 villages without power. Chinese authorities, led by President Xi Jinping, have mobilized extensive rescue efforts, while the government allocated 200 million yuan for relief, highlighting the urgent need for robust disaster preparedness in the face of increasingly extreme weather. This tragedy underscores the importance of resilient infrastructure and individual readiness to mitigate the human and economic toll of such natural disasters.
You're listening to Underground USA News.